In a number of spiritual paths, your deeper questions might find answers in a session in the pastor's study. You're looking for something more, so let's offer you something different. Merry meet, blessed be, and welcome to yet another session in a very different pastor's study. Last time I talked about picking up my own gauntlet. Well, this time I'm going to talk about what and why. If you've heard the commercial and the tags at the end of The Secret's in Plain Sight, you've heard me say we all have a ministry. And so, if you're going to have a ministry, you ought to know why. The first thing that's usually is there in the reasons why. Number one, doing what I like to do. As far as I'm concerned, priesthood is getting to be more and more of what defines me. I've mentioned before, and you're welcome to look at it, it's on The Witch's Voice and a few other places, an essay. Priesthood is a state of being. I really am convinced that for those who are really called, priesthood is unavoidable. No matter how much of a burden it is, once you're in it, you feel a pain if you're not. A lacking, a missing, a void. Liking to do it, or being good at something. Music ministers tend to be very good musicians. And why not? Herbalists, astrologers, various people who work with various kinds of divination. It's something that they offer, that they're good at doing. What the heck? A great painter does great paintings. And so Michelangelo painted the Sistine Chapel. He offered what he was good at. Yeah. So, once we get past that, then there's, okay, who are you trying to reach? What is it that particularly motivates? I suppose if I had gotten into the priesthood, when I first asked to, by now I would have spent about 30-some years, most of which would be as a rector at St. Somebody's at the corner of whatever in some place. And I would have probably been very comfortable, or at least I would have tried to be, dealing with people who were trying to be very comfortable. Well, I'm looking for right now. What I really want to reach out to, the folks that I really care about, the ones that I worry about. Basically, I put them into 3 categories. First, the spiritually wounded. The ones who suddenly discover that maybe the people that they thought cared about them really don't. Or they've been the victim of abuse in one way or another. Or maybe they got tired of being told about God's will, God's time, God's higher plan, especially God's will. I've heard so many stories about people who got turned away from any kind of spirituality because of being told about God's will. And I'll agree. If their God really willed all the things that people say that he's willed, he'd belong in a mental hospital. He would need the services of several very good psychiatrists. And then, of course, there are those who wind up being abandoned. The ones who discover that the group where they felt so much at home, well, they can't be with that group because of distance, time, work schedule, and they can't find anybody else. Or, as sometimes happens, a change in life makes them suddenly no longer welcome. Some people who've joined the military are suddenly no longer welcome, or victims of gossip, or any number of a few other things. Why am I worried about the spiritually wounded? Because a lot of times those people used to be spiritually very strong, and they used to have a lot to offer. Otherwise, they wouldn't be wounded. You can't stub the toe on a person who was born without feet. The next are the spiritually frustrated. Those who are looking for something. And they can't get any help. They can't get any ideas as to where to look. Or the people who have the control over the doors refuse to open them. Or worse, and it's almost a tradition in some spiritual paths, it seems, the ones who could open the doors will have reasons why they're not allowed to, or how their hands are tied. And if their hands are tied, well, maybe something should be done about hooking these people up with some people whose hands are not tied. And then there's the spiritually hungry. The spiritually hungry, those who want something that they're not getting. Those who keep seeking. If you go to a church, and here I'll pick on a particular denomination, I won't name it, but it was the one that my parents took me to when I was little. And the God that they taught me about there basically sat up there in heaven, watched over the work that he'd done all those years ago, and didn't do anything except keep score on me. Yeah. He would know if I burped in church. But there was no point in praying to ask for something, because that wasn't his department. And when I changed denominations, he was to pursue the idea of a God who could do something in the here and now. Surprising where I had to go to find it. But that's a pretty good definition of spiritual hunger. And now that I've got a banquet, I might be able to give some people some clues as to how to find their own banquet. May not be the same as mine, but there are many tables that are set and waiting. Now the problem, there are three possible problems, three outcomes. And this is why these people concern me. One is, somebody could wind up following an abuser. There are plenty of them out there looking for the hungry, the frustrated, and the hurting. And oh, here's my solution. Follow my solution. And they start marching behind them in little, like good little soldiers, and maybe march off at the end of the cliff. Then, of course, there are those who don't find anybody, and they wind up spiritually dead or just the opposite. A little girl. You've heard about this one from me perhaps before. A little girl, 3 years old. Daddy dies. A little girl at that age, the sun rises and sets on Daddy, and when Daddy dies suddenly, she wants to know why. And somebody tells her it was God's will. So she grows up into a very fine young woman, except for the fact that she is a very devout atheist. And any time that anybody offers her anything spiritual, she says something to the effect of, if I believe in him, I have to hate him. If I don't believe in him, then I don't worry about him. Now you tell me which I'm supposed to do. And they go away and shut up. And I don't blame her. But you and I know that there's something else, something better. Somebody who wills something better for her. That not everything that goes wrong is God's will. Sometimes it's a lot of what's God's will is actually greedy people's will. But we'll get into that some more. As a matter of fact, if you've been listening to The Secrets in Plain Sight, you know we have. But other possibility is that they can become, that these people, the wounded, the frustrated, and the hungry can become strong. And once they found their own answers that satisfy them, then some great things can happen. And why not? And so, here we go. Now you know some more of what I was talking about last week. I'm Odin, blessed be. Uriel's Gifts and the Secrets in Plain Sight are sponsored by the Temple of Gaia. At Temple of Gaia, we don't train you to our path. We show you how to find and pursue your own path. Above all, we tried to provide a great place to come together and to share. We're located in Collingdale, Pennsylvania, just outside of Philadelphia, and wherever cyberspace can be reached. To learn more, visit our website at templeofgaiainc.org or our meeting place in cyberspace at templeofgaia.ning.com. Thank you for coming. Feel free to return at any time. We intend to always have something for you here. Blessed be. This has been a presentation of the Wise Ones Net. Merry part and blessed be.